Imagine being just 20 years old and deciding, you know what, I'm going to take on the world's biggest superpower. It sounds like a movie plot, but it's the real story of Alexander the Great. He was a Macedonian king who launched one of the most unbelievable military campaigns in all of history against the massive Persian Empire. So, how on earth did he pull it off? Well, let's dive right into this incredible story.
All right, let's set the scene. The year is 334 BC, and this is the starting gun for an absolutely epic 10-year campaign that would stretch his army to the very edge of the known world and completely reshape history as we know it.
And this right here, this is the core of it all. I mean, the sheer ambition is just mind-boggling. You got Alexander, the leader of this small, rugged kingdom up in Macedonia, and he sets his sights on the Persian Empire, a colossal, incredibly wealthy, and what seemed to be an invincible force. It was the ultimate David versus Goliath story, for real.
But you know, Alexander didn't just appear out of thin air. To really get a grip on his conquests, you have to understand the world he was born into. The famous Greek city-states, Athens, Sparta, they had basically spent decades just beating each other up, leaving them weak and vulnerable. And that created a power vacuum for a rising kingdom to the north, Macedonia.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because this is how Alexander's father, Philip II, literally set the stage for him. Philip was a military genius who completely revolutionized the Macedonian army. Just look at this comparison. While the Greeks were using their classic dory spear, Philip gave his men the sarissa, a monster of a pike 6 meters long. We're talking almost 20 feet. It wasn't just a longer spear. It created this terrifying, unstoppable wall of sharp points. And while Greece was just a mess of squabbling city-states, Philip unified Macedonia and then Greece, creating the perfect launchpad for an even bigger ambition.
So just as this grand invasion of Persia is about to kick off, bam, Philip is assassinated. Alexander, at just 20 years old, inherits the whole shebang. And he had to act fast. He ruthlessly got rid of any rivals, he crushed rebellions all over Greece, and then he made a horrifying example of the city of Thebes by burning it to the ground. The message was sent, loud and clear. I'm in charge now.
Okay, so with his kingdom locked down, Alexander crosses into Asia Minor in the spring of 334 BC. The Great Invasion was on, and it really didn't take long for him to face his first major test against the Persian army.
And this was the military machine he brought with him. It wasn't just an army. It was a perfectly balanced, professional killing force. Think of it like this. The phalangites and their massive pikes were the unbreakable anvil at the center. The elite hypospists were like bodyguards, protecting its vulnerable sides. And then you had the hammer, the companion cavalry, the best horsemen in the world, which Alexander himself would lead right into the thick of the battle.
So, at the Granicus River, the Persians thought they had a solid plan. Hold the steep riverbank with their cavalry and just pick off the Macedonians as they struggled across. Alexander's generals told him to wait, to be cautious, but nope, he ordered an immediate head-on charge right across the river and straight into the teeth of the enemy. As the historian Arrian tells us, it was absolute chaos.
That charge was incredibly brave, but also incredibly reckless, and it almost got him killed. He gets isolated, surrounded, and attacked by 2 Persian nobles. One of them smacks him so hard his helmet shatters. As the other guy raises his sword for the killing blow, out of nowhere, his general, Cletus the Black, sweeps in and literally cuts the attacker's arm clean off, saving the king's life. It's an amazing moment. But remember that name, Cletus the Black. It's going to come back later in a really, really tragic way.
So, winning at the Granicus opened up a huge chunk of territory. But let's be real, the Persian Empire was massive. This was far from over. In fact, the war was just getting personal. Now it was a true clash of kings. The young, bold Alexander versus the ruler of the known world, the king of kings, Darius III.
A year later, we get to the Battle of Issus. And just look at these numbers. Darius brings something like 100,000 men against Alexander's 40,000. Darius thinks he's being clever. He traps the Macedonians on this tiny, narrow coastal plain, but it completely backfires. His massive numbers are totally useless because they're all crammed together. It was the perfect setup for Alexander to do what he did best, a pinpoint, lightning-fast charge aimed right at Darius himself. And faced with that fury, what does Darius do? He panics, turns his chariot around and flees for his life, leaving his army to collapse.
All right. Now we come to Gaugamela. This is the final showdown, and it is Alexander's absolute masterpiece. This time, Darius picks the battlefield himself, a huge, wide-open plain, perfect for his enormous army. No excuses this time, right? Well, Alexander pulls a move so brilliant that military colleges still study it today. He starts marching his elite troops way out to the right, almost like he's leaving the fight. The Persians take the bait. They stretch their own line to follow him, afraid of getting flanked. But as they do that, they create a gap right near their center. And that was the moment Alexander was waiting for. He pivots his cavalry on a dime and charges like a thunderbolt straight through that hole, making a beeline for Darius once again.
And can you guess what happened? For the second time, the King of Kings turned and fled in terror. And with their leader gone, the massive Persian army just disintegrated. The Battle of Gaugamela was the killer blow. Alexander had shattered the Persian Empire. Its great cities, Babylon and Persepolis, were now completely defenseless.
But you know, conquering an empire is one thing. Ruling it, that's a whole different story. After Gaugamela, Darius was eventually murdered by his own men, making Alexander the undisputed king of Asia. But absolute victory can do strange things to a person. His march continued east, on this relentless, obsessive quest to reach what he believed was the literal edge of the world. And it's here that the story gets complicated. The line between hero and tyrant starts to get really, really blurry. All those years of absolute power began to warp Alexander's personality. And it raises the question, was he a heroic liberator anymore? Or was he becoming a paranoid despot? And nothing shows this dark turn better than one of the most tragic moments of his life. At a banquet, fueled by wine, Alexander got into a bitter argument with Clytus the Black. Yep, the same man who had saved his life. As Alexander's arrogance clashed with the blunt honesty of his old general, his rage just boiled over, and he killed him. He was immediately consumed by grief, of course, but the act showed a dangerous new paranoia and pride that couldn't be questioned.
Just take a second to look at this timeline. For 8 straight years, his army had been pushing relentlessly onward, from the invasion of Persia in 334, through Egypt, across Mesopotamia, into the mountains of Afghanistan, and then all the way to the jungles of India in 326. They had been marching and fighting for nearly a decade without any real rest. But in India, after winning his bloodiest battle yet, Alexander's ambition finally went too far. Hearing rumors of even bigger, more powerful armies deeper in the subcontinent, his exhausted, homesick veterans finally had enough. They mutinied. For the first time ever, his men flat out refused his command. A furious Alexander had no choice but to finally turn back. The long march back to the heart of his empire was grueling. But when he returned to Babylon, it was clear that even after all that, even after conquering the known world, Alexander was not finished. Not even close. But fate had other plans.
I mean, just look at this. He wasn't done at all. He was already planning brand new campaigns, like an invasion of Arabia. But he was also thinking about how to actually govern this massive new empire. He was working to fuse his Macedonians and the Persians together, even organizing mass weddings to try and create a new, blended ruling class.
But right in the middle of all these grand, world-changing plans, he was struck down by a sudden, violent fever. And just a few days later, Alexander the Great was dead. He was only 32 years old.
And this is the ultimate tragic irony of his life. He was undefeated in battle, a military commander who was second to none in history. And yet, he died without naming a clear successor to hold his gigantic empire together.
And the result was, predictably, chaos. His empire, held together basically by his force of will alone, was immediately torn apart. His top generals, who we call the Diadochi, or successors, started decades of war against each other. They carved up the empire into their own personal kingdoms, like the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt and the Seleucid Empire in Asia, which you can see broken down here. So this leaves us with the final big question. Alexander's empire crumbled almost as fast as he built it, so was that his legacy? Or was it something much bigger? His conquests didn't just move borders around, they shattered the old world and kicked off a brand new era, the Hellenistic age. This was a time when Greek culture, language, and ideas spread like wildfire across the East, fusing with local traditions to create this vibrant new civilization that would, funny enough, pave the way for the rise of Rome, an idea maybe that turned out to be far more powerful and lasting than any empire of land.